continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We began the show talking about the last couple days of Michael Cohen on the stand, the aspiring Michael Clayton. Never quite worked out for Michael Cohen, convicted felon, serial perjurer, general nitwit. Again, Trump's fault for putting somebody like that around him, but that doesn't mean that he's guilty of a crime. 2 days of testimony, and Rachel Maddow or Chris Hayes, I'm not sure which. I can never tell the two apart. But on MSNBC, we're waving around the smoking gun, Exhibit 35, with the notations from Weisselberg and Cohen about how the money was going to be structured and so forth. Yeah, okay. And? What? And?
Yeah,
what?
And?
There is no and. That's the problem for the prosecution and the judge. Here's what George Washington law professor Jonathan Turley had to say on Hannity last night about how this case should be adjudicated at this stage.
No, not at all. And indeed, one of the most impressive things about the last 2 days is it does appear that Cohen may have committed perjury again. You know, his explanations on various points do not strike some of us as true. You know, when he said that he surreptitiously taped the president, which just blasts away ethical obligations, he said he was doing that really to help Trump and to keep David Pecker honest. It makes no sense. That is, it's just no one can get their head around that. But that was just one of a number of moments where you really have to be impressed with this guy who really has shown throughout his life that he'll only tell the truth if he has no alternative. Now, what I think was the most amazing thing today is that the prosecutors said that they will close their case, they'll rest their case after Cohen's testimony is done. There's only one problem. Nobody has established the elements of any crime. The government has not even stated or explained why listing these payments as legal expenses is not correct. They haven't put on any material evidence to support those elements. Most judges would be insulted for prosecutors to say, well, that's a wrap, without ever making the basis for a case. So the judge is going to have this motion for a directed verdict. And I think any judge in good faith would grant that motion. If he sends this to the jury, he is sending a case to a jury where no crime has been stated, and even core factual issues remain very much in doubt. I still cannot figure out not only what the crime was that brought to life this dead misdemeanor, I can't figure out what the government's arguing as to how this should have been denoted. If it wasn't a legal expense, what's the notation some accountant should have put in a ledger? None of us know because they just have shrugged. And that's what this case is. It's a shrug. And they expect the judge to do the same.
You said you had a boner to pick with Stormy?
Well, I mean, the more I think about how pathetic her testimony was, obviously she was coached. But here she is on Bill Maher saying she acted like she was a rape victim, that he held her against her will. She blacked out. Like that, to me says, did he drug her? I mean, what was going on? But this is her a few years ago on the Bill Maher show talking about that incident that happened, that she, agreed to go to his hotel room.
Why did you Donald Trump? Okay, but you say it's not a Me Too case.
It is not a Me Too case. I mean, I wasn't assaulted. I wasn't attacked or raped or coerced or blackmailed. They tried to shove me in the Me Too box to further their own agenda. And first of all, I didn't want any part of that because it's not the truth, and I'm not a victim in that regard.
That's not what she's saying now.
And then Bill Maher, he talked about, that's not what she's saying now.
Yeah, right, and so this is the amazing thing about this case.
Right, but it also, too, she said she doesn't want money, but she tried to sell her story to dirty.org back in 2011, and they didn't want it.
So this is the amazing thing about this case. There is no case, and there is no case that you're trying to advance with two witnesses who have no credibility. It's really something to behold. You have a serial perjurer. In fact, criminal defense attorney Robert Costello, who we've heard before on Michael Cohen, is going to be before the House Weaponization Committee to talk about how about the same time that Stormy Daniels was changing her story, Michael Cohen was telling him that there was no hush money payment, that the whole thing was made up. He's a convicted serial perjurer, may have perjured himself again on the stand because old habits die hard, as Jonathan Turley just said. So you have a failure, essentially a failure to state a claim because there's no underlying crime. And as Turley said, so if this was wrong, fraudulent, legal expense, then what would have been lawfully compliant? Shrug. No case with zero credible witnesses. Can't wait to see what Judge Merchant does. For more on that, we're pleased to be joined by Adam Mill, attorney specializing in labor and employment and public administration law, contributor to The Federalist, American Greatness, and The Daily Caller. Adam, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan and Amy, and thanks for inviting me.
Do you think, I mean, whatever commentary you have on the testimony to date from Stormy and from Cohen, but it seems to me the question now is there enough general repudiation of the quality of this case from the legal community, particularly the legal community on TV, that Judge Merchant will feel the pressure to do exactly what Jonathan Turley suggested he do?
Yeah, Dan, actually, I was going to Turley stole my thunder. I was going to actually make the suggestion that the best thing that Judge Meacham could do for the Democrats right now is to sustain the motion for a directed verdict. This case is really horrible. And I want to talk a little bit about how Michael Cohen got himself into the position of basically being the puppet for the Get Trump movement. The DOJ charged him with 5 charges of tax evasion for failing to report $4 million in income. He filed five false tax returns, and then he took out a HELOC. And this was all done to do some kind of crime scheme involving taxi medallions, I think, in Chicago, had absolutely nothing to do with Trump. And so they tacked on, these were Get Trump prosecutors, this was back in 2018, and they tacked on these 2 nonsense election campaign violations. And one of them is, the argument is that, well, Cohen helped the newspaper kill one of Trump's sex stories, and that was a illegal campaign contribution. It's a very novel theory, and I don't believe it's ever been tried out in any other instance. And then he was also accused of making an excessive contribution to the Trump campaign. Well, there's just one problem with that. Cohen did not make a contribution to the Trump campaign. He got the money back, and the black letter law of the Federal Elections Commission is that if you were paid back, it's not a contribution. So, but there is a smoking gun in this case, and I'm surprised people haven't talked about it. Trump did disclose this payment to Cohen to the Federal Elections Commission. He filed in 2017 on a timely basis a disclosure that has satisfied the FEC. The FEC, after Cohen pleaded guilty, the Federal Elections Commission was petitioned by these Get Trump lawyers. Hey, you see, Cohen pleaded guilty to this, so we need to get Trump now. Well, they they refused to take the case up, and then they were sued. The FEC was sued by the Get Trump lawyers to try and get a federal district court judge to force the FEC to take up this exact same theory that's being used in this case right now. And keep in mind, this is all stuff that happened in the 2016 election, not the 2020 election, not the 2024 election, 8 years ago. And so that district court refused to accept that and dismissed that case. So what we've got here is, and Turley's right about this, Trump is not charged with entering false business records. That's a misdemeanor. He's charged with entering false business records to conceal or further another crime.
Right.
Okay? And in this entire time, he's never been told what the other crime is. So my piece that I just did in Chronicles Magazine Online, I pointed out that, well, maybe I'm engaging a little bit of mind reading because that's what Alvin Bragg is making us do. Maybe what he's going to try and do is argue to the jury that since Cohen pleaded guilty to these two, like they were just add-on charges. I mean, it's not what Cohen was really in trouble for, and so he had no incentive to argue on these charges. He didn't serve any additional time. He didn't pay any additional fines. It's just something he did to please the prosecutors. But they're going to take these add-on charges that Cohen pleaded guilty to in 2018 and try and say that's the crime that Trump was trying to cover up. But if there had been any, like even an attorney of mediocre skill, if that had been the thing Cohen had actually been in trouble for, making these contributions, it would have immediately been dismissed as, well, if Cohen got paid back for these contributions, they're not contributions. That's the black letter of the law. So, yeah, I completely agree with Turley. The best thing that could happen for the Democrats is for the judge to sustain the directed verdict, because Trump is, he is jujitsuing this like I've never seen before. He has turned this into a campaign bonanza. He's got all the cameras pointed on him. The entire country's mad about these bond restrictions that keep him from commenting on the case. Truly is right, and I think Dershowitz has said this too. The interest of the government to keep Trump quiet gives way to his right to free speech. Rights trump interests. And so Trump has a right to free speech, especially during a campaign, especially during an election.
Well, and to the extent that that's been unconstitutionally constrained, now he's got a posse that's come around him. This is like a scene, I've been saying, it's like a scene from Lean on Me. They're all at the courthouse steps saying, release Crazy Joe Clark. So all these politicians, both state level and federal, a lot of lawyers like the Alabama Attorney General, like J.D. Vance, like Vivek Ramaswamy, that is really ratcheting up the public pressure on him. That you've got, you're sending the message that there will be essentially a reckoning for this show trial that you've put on here in Manhattan, and this is not going to go away when this case goes away, Judge Merchant. So. Choose your course wisely, and that's completely legitimate to say because of the quality of the decisions that have been made by this prosecutor and this judge.
Yeah, I do agree, and I want to pick up on something Amy just talked about with Stormy Daniels. I agree that both Cohen and Daniels have very little credibility, but in order to even get to the credibility, you really have to have a case to begin with. There has to be some kind of the stool has to have enough legs to stand by itself. And since Bragg has failed to do that, we really don't even get to their credibility. But I want you to imagine sitting in a freezing cold courtroom for 2 days and watching this over-the-hill porn actress, try to act and perform for this jury. And she's, positioning her body and throwing her leg up over the witness box railing to try and mimic Trump and how he was. I mean, juries hate that stuff. And to just force them to sit through that and force them to sit through Cohen, neither one of them are serious witnesses with really any sense of justice. And they're away from their families. They're having to be away from their work. They're being abused. I will not be surprised if, yes, this New York jury renders a not guilty verdict in spite of, where he is. I think that's well within the possibility. And again,
well, that's interesting.
That this judge can do.
I hope so.
The best thing this judge can do is direct the verdict.
Well,
right, because the last thing you want as an activist in the Democrat Socialist Party, which clearly Judge Merchant is, the last thing you want to do is have a jury acquit him. Oh my! I mean, that would be an indictment of the entire Democrat Socialist power structure in this country if you had a Manhattan jury acquit President Trump.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely possible. Yeah.
Adam,
can I say one of the
yeah,
things
go ahead.
About your last caller? You were talking about the economy and Biden's spending. I have a degree in economics. I just want to say a couple things about and to chime in what he said. Milton Friedman said that if you want to measure how much the government is taking out of the economy, he said you just look at the total government spending. You don't worry about what the borrowing is or the taxes are, because as Trump is saying now, it's an inflation tax. That's absolutely right. All this spending is acting as a consumption tax on groceries, on gas, on rent, on cars. Everything that people have to buy is more expensive because of all this spending is literally taxing what people have to spend their money on. So he was absolutely right about that. But the simplest way to look at it is, it's not fiscal policy or what did we do in the Great Depression. Just look at the total spending, and we're going $1 trillion in debt, deeper in debt every 100 days, and that's $1 trillion that comes out of the purchasing power of the lower middle class and people who have to spend all their paychecks on groceries and food and gas and things like that.
Well, good. Hopefully Trump will
invite me to talk about that, but
hopefully Trump will apply that philosophy to his next term, because he didn't really apply it in the first term too. So there truly is on that score a lot of blame to go around. The Republicans that are decrying that right now, hopefully they'll apply that. They'll live their the example. But anyway, Adam Mill, thanks so much and by the way, if you don't need to explain that to us, but you do need to explain that to Jared Bernstein and President Biden and others. Adam Mill, attorney specializing in labor, employment, and public administration law, contributor to the Federalist, American Greatness, and the Daily Caller. Check out his latest piece on Michael Cohen over at Chronicles magazine. Adam, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity,